Hi there. I know that Spider-Man was recently let go from his position as, well, Spider-Man, but I'm here to audition to be the new Spider-Man. As you can see, I already have myself a costume. I can do the web sounds, like thwip, thwip, thwip. You just got webbed. Right? I mean, that's what he says, I assume. I don't know. I don't read comics. I'm not a fucking nerd. Um, I'm naturally a sticky person in general, so I feel like that should, give me an advantage against other auditions. Do I get spider insurance? Oh, hey guys. I'm just waiting for that web dickhead to bust through my door and tell me to review one of his movies. I've been sitting here for 5 hours now and nothing. He's just disappeared like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man after 2014. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This is an interesting film to talk about. Opinions on this film have been very mixed over the years, even more so than the first film. The thing is, when it comes to The Amazing Spider-Man, what you think of that film really depends on what you think of the Raimi films. But the same cannot be said about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, as even people who liked the first movie were very disappointed in the sequel. Now, in terms of the production, there's not really anything interesting to talk about this time around. It was pretty straightforward. The Amazing Spider-Man, while not being as successful as the Raimi films, still grossed over $750 million, so a sequel seemed likely. James Vanderbilt was brought back to write the first draft, but then they brought in Jeff Pinker as well as Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman for rewrites, the latters of which are responsible for arguably the worst Transformers movie. Oh god, it's already a bad sign. Mark Convenient Last Name Webb was returning to direct. The filmmakers decided to have two main villains for this film. Yes, I said two, not three. We'll get to that later. These villains were Electro and Green Goblin. Oh well, so much for not wanting to repeat the Raimi films. Andrew huge Spider-Man fan Garfield would of course be reprising his role as the Webhead, and would suggest the idea of Peter Parker being gay. He even suggested a gender-swapped version of Mary Jane, played by Michael B. Jordan. Yeah, kinda random, but hey, at least he's trying to make up for homophobic Spidey back in 2002. Of course this didn't end up happening, but there is something else they did during production that's pretty significant, but I actually want to save that for the review. So the movie was released on May 2nd, 2014. Similar to Spider-Man 3, this movie released close to my birthday, so we'll just say that I was 11 years old. Like I said with the last review, I liked both of the Amazing Spider-Man films when they came out. At this age, I wasn't looking at movies from a filmmaking perspective, or even an adaptation perspective. This was around the time that I actually began to watch videos about Spider-Man comics. Mostly the well-known and iconic storylines, so I still wasn't the nerd loser you know today. Despite this, I do remember thinking at the time that this movie wasn't quite as good as the first one, but I still enjoyed it. But that was far from what most people thought at the time. Another thing that was similar to Spider-Man 3 was that this film was torn apart for the first few years after its release. The criticism was also very similar to that of Spider-Man 3, in that there was too many characters and plot lines. Look, no matter what you personally think of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, the general consensus at the time was that his Spider-Man was shit. Or at the very least, his movies were shit. But then something happened. In 2021, a little movie called Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and, well, I don't think I have to tell you what happened in that movie. Suddenly, a lot of people started looking back on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, thinking that he was an overlooked gem. His Spider-Man was awesome and filled with aura. The amount of edits being made about him were skyrocketing. Garfield's Spider-Man suddenly went from being considered shit to being considered the shit. Now you're probably thinking, Aaron, your opinion on the first film has clearly changed since you were a kid, so surely it's changed for this movie as well, right? Well, yes, it has changed, but not exactly in the way you might be thinking. So with that being said, it's time to find out if this movie is shit or the shit. This is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So the movie starts with, oh, that's right, Peter's parents, the mystery that was put into the previous movie for marketing purposes and was forgotten about. Well, I guess the filmmakers wanted to return to Peter's parents to make up for all the non-answers we got in the last movie. Peter's parents seem to be on the run and have something important that some bad guys want. They attempt to flee via plane, but it turns out an assassin is on board and attempts to kill them, but not before Peter's father is able to preserve whatever information he has. Now, there's one problem with this scene. Well, other than the fact that I don't give a shit. This fight scene is awful. It uses a lot of shaky cam and quick cuts, which is usually a sign of lazy fighting. Why does there even have to be a fight scene in the plane? We already know how this ends. Just get to Spider-Man doing Spider-Man things. You know, what we paid for. Now, thankfully, after the plane goes down, the film has a really fun transition into Spider-Man diving from the sky as we see Wallopin' web snappers, look at that new suit. It looks amazing. Wait a minute, hold on. We're not going to use the Fant 4-stick clip again. Let's try something more original. Let me try again. It looks amazing.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Seriously though, this has to be the best Spider-Man costume ever put to screen. Pretty much everything about this costume is perfect. The colors, the spider symbols, the lenses look stellar. The only other suit that could possibly rival this is the upcoming suit in Brand New Day. So Spidey has to stop an Oscorp truck that's carrying plutonium. By the way, take a shot every time I say Oscorp in this review. Oh, well, it's already time to take a shot because Spider-Man ends up saving an Oscorp employee named Max Dillon, played by Jamie Foxx. Spider-Man gives Max, who appears to be a bit of a loser, some words of encouragement. He finally goes back to pursuing the truck, which is being driven by Alexei Stitsevich, played by Paul Giamatti. You know, Peter, you could have stopped this truck a long time ago if you didn't take the time to crack jokes. Seriously, people are getting hurt and Spider-Man is just putting on a comedy routine. But hey, if you think Spider-Man is a psycho now, just wait till later. He also answers a phone call from Gwen, as it turns out he's missing his high school graduation. Hey, I know that jingle. It's the theme song from the 1960s animated series. But if that wasn't obvious enough, Spider-Man starts whistling that same theme song while apprehending Alexei. Not very subtle, guys. Speaking of things that aren't very subtle, Gwen's graduation speech.
I know we all think that we're immortal.
We're supposed to feel that way. We're graduating.
What makes life valuable is that it doesn't last forever. What makes it precious is that it ends. So don't waste it living someone else's life. Make yours count for something.
My god, is this a graduation ceremony or a funeral? I mean, you'd think Gwen is gonna die in this movie. I mean, surely if they were gonna kill Gwen, they wouldn't make it that obvious, right? Right? So Peter just barely makes it on time, and thankfully remembers to take his mask off.
I know that guy.
Oh, well, lucky for Peter, Stanley only thinks he knows him. I mean, at least he didn't blurt out Peter's name while he has the mask on. I'm sure that will never happen to him in this movie.
I wish your uncle could have been here.
Me too. And my folks.
Oh no, Peter, we don't care about your folks. Only Uncle Ben. We've been over this. But you know who actually should have been at the graduation? Flash Thompson, who is nowhere to be seen in this movie. In fact, there's a deleted scene that shows Flash after the ceremony, thanking Gwen for all the tutoring, and even gives Peter a hug. Why the fuck would you cut that shit out? That's a great moment and just further proves that this is the best version of Flash. Of all the shit in this movie to cut out, and trust me, there's a lot of shit, you choose this? Well, whatever. In the next scene, we see that Peter is supposed to meet Gwen and her family for dinner, but finds that he can't do it. This is because he's feeling guilty after he broke Captain Stacy's promise to stay away from Gwen. He even sees Captain Stacy as a ghost cop everywhere he goes. Gwen tells him that it's not his choice to make, but Peter is afraid of losing Gwen by continuing to be together. Gwen, frustrated with this, ends up breaking things off. Now this is actually one of the best things this movie does. I like Peter and Gwen's dilemma trying to decide what to do when it comes to Spider-Man and their relationship. Peter wants to be with Gwen, but doesn't want to risk her safety, and of course he has to own up to his responsibilities as Spider-Man, so he can't live a normal life. Spider-Man is the wrench that comes between Peter and happiness. It's kinda similar to Raimi's Spider-Man 2. The difference here is that Gwen knows he's Spider-Man, which makes it a bit of a tragic love story. Now, I do have a problem regarding this towards the end of the movie, and I think you know exactly what I'm referring to, but of course we'll get to that later. Now, Gwen breaking up with Peter leads into this really great montage of Peter doing various things as Spider-Man, as we also hear various people give their opinions on the wall crawler. This whole montage is honestly the best scene in the entire movie. Not only does it do a great job showcasing Peter's life as Spider-Man, not only does it have very good humorous moments, but it also has a part where Spider-Man saves this little boy from some bullies. I love that all Peter has to do is just drop in, and his sheer presence makes the bullies run away. The way he interacts with this kid is also so adorable, even offering to walk him home. This is one of the best Spider-Man moments ever put to screen. And hey, it's also nice to see scenes of Spider-Man in the daytime. After this montage, we get a pretty funny scene of Peter in his bedroom, hiding his costume before Aunt May walks in. That's something I feel this movie does even better than the first movie. The comedic moments work really well, and one of the reasons for that is due to Andrew Garfield. I actually like Garfield as Spider-Man, and even as Peter Parker, a lot more in this movie compared to the last. He's a lot more likable as Peter Parker in this movie, and I think the reason why is because they no longer have to portray him as the outcast lusting after Gwen Stacy. Now the thing is, I still tend to like him even more in costume, and that's especially true for this movie. Garfield in costume is just fun to watch. You can tell he had a lot more fun playing the character this time around. Now I'm not one to really care about having Spider-Man tell a lot of jokes, which is why I don't have a problem with Maguire's Spidey, but I will say that in terms of the quips themselves, no one does it better than Garfield does in this movie. Now, with that being said, I don't think Spider-Man is portrayed perfectly in this movie, such as the opening scene where I mentioned they have him tell jokes rather than saving lives. And there's also something towards the end of this movie that I'm not a fan of, but these are problems with the writing, not Garfield himself. I like his quips, I like how he interacts with civilians, and I love the little moment of him looking down at Gwen before being interrupted by a fire. A great moment that captures his inner conflict. So no, I can't say that Garfield is my favorite portrayal of the character, but I do think this is a huge improvement over the last movie. But now it's time to go back to Max Dillon, who as it turns out is a bit of a fan of the wall crawler.
I know what they say about you in the press, but it doesn't matter to me because I know the real you, because you're amazing. Wow. That's what the press needs. They should call you the Amazing Spider-Man.
Ha, he said the thing.
You like that, Spidey? I like it a lot, Max. Good.
Okay, maybe a fan isn't quite the right word to describe it. It's more of a psychotic obsession. He even pretends that Spider-Man made him a cake for his birthday that nobody else remembered. How sad indeed. We then find out Aunt May has been taking odd jobs to earn some extra money.
Well, I sold another couple of photos to the Bugle, so that ought to help.
Yeah, it would really help if that guy would pay you a fair wage.
Well, Jameson pays me a fair wage. If it was 1961, he paid me a fair wage.
Oh, sweet, Peter's working for Jameson now. I can't wait to see him. What's that? He's not in the movie? Well, this movie just got lame. Yeah, despite Peter selling photos to him, Jameson never actually appears in this movie, and it's likely because the filmmakers knew they wouldn't be able to top J.K. Simmons' performance. The closest we get is when Peter gets an email from Jameson reaffirming that Spider-Man is a menace. We then go back to Max Dillon arriving at Oscorp and running into his boss, played by Ryan from The Office.
Ryan started the fire!
And you'll never guess who he's supposed to be playing. Alistair Smythe. Alistair Smythe in the comics is the son of Spencer Smythe, who creates the various different Spider Slayers to combat Spider-Man. After Spencer dies, his son Alistair takes over for him as revenge for his father's death. That is who this character is supposed to be. Yeah, I just have one simple question about that. What is the point of this? Why call him Alistair Smythe if he has nothing to do with his comic book counterpart? And guess what, folks? This isn't the only character that gets this treatment, as we'll see later.
You designed them. Sure you did. And I'm Spider-Man.
You're no Spider-Man. He's a Leo. You're a Sagittarius. You will smash him again. I'm gonna rip your well-groomed head off.
Now get to work.
Spider-Man is a Leo, and you're a Sagittarius. How the fuck would Max know Spider-Man's birthday? Look, I get that this is all in Max's head, but it's still pretty weird that Max would say he's a Leo. Like, is that what he just assumes in his psychotic fantasies? My only guess is that this is meant to be a reference to when Amazing Fantasy 15 released, which many people assume was August 10th, which would make him a Leo. However, this is actually a mistake, as even though the comic was dated August, it was actually released on June 5th, which would make him a Gemini. And if you want to get even more fucked, in comic continuity, Peter's birthday is confirmed to be October 14th, making him a Libra. Funny, because Michael Myers is also a Libra. But that's comic Peter. In regard to Garfield's Spider-Man, well, is he a Leo, or is this just more of Max Dillon's delusions? Oh, for fuck's sake, why am I even talking about this? Let's just move on. Max meets Gwen in the elevator and continues to obsess over Spider-Man. We're then introduced to another character in this movie, Harry Osborn, played by Dane DeHaan. As the first movie established, his father is dying and Harry goes to visit him. Harry is upset with his father for never actually being there for him. Norman tells Harry that the disease he's afflicted with is actually genetic, and that Harry will soon be experiencing symptoms. Now, they never explain what exactly this disease is, but from the looks of Norman's hands, it appears to turn them into goblins. Okay then. Norman dies after giving Harry this news, which leaves him as the sole heir of Oscorp. So as Gwen gets a call from Oxford University, we go back to Max Dillon, who is forced to work on an electrical problem. But shit goes wrong and Max falls into a pool of electric eels. Miraculously, he doesn't die from this, as his whole body is charged with electricity, and it manages to fix the gap in his teeth.
You serious?
So we see Harry is now the head of Oscorp and has a meeting with his employees. This is when we find out that Alistair Smythe isn't the only comic character thrown in for no reason.
You were his assistant, right? What's your name?
Felicia.
Yeah, that's right. Harry's assistant is Felicia Hardy, making her live-action debut, played by Felicity Jones. Why is she in this movie? I don't fucking know. What does she have in common with her comic book counterpart? I don't fucking know. She's just in this movie so that the Spider-Man fans can recognize the name. She has no character. Maybe they had plans for her to become Black Hat in future sequels, but she adds nothing to this movie. Harry gets interrupted when Peter decides to show up to see Harry for the first time in 8 years. Yeah, it turns out they were good friends off screen and finally get to reconnect.
You got a lady?
I don't know, it's, I don't know. It's complicated.
Hey, what a coincidence. Those are my exact thoughts on this movie.
Gwen Stacy.
She works for you.
Really?
Yeah, the real question is, who in this movie doesn't work for Oscorp? It's practically this movie's favorite word. I hope you've been keeping up with the shots, by the way. So it turns out that Harry's underlings are planning on getting rid of him and want to cover up Max Dillon's accident. We then see Peter meeting up with Gwen because they want to try hanging out as friends. Now, something I do want to give this movie is that I actually don't mind the Peter and Gwen scenes. I didn't like them in the last movie because the dialogue was pretty insufferable and didn't really lead anywhere, but I actually found the scenes in this movie to be way more tolerable. The characters do still repeat themselves a lot, but it's nowhere near as bad as the first movie. It also helps that these scenes are far and few between. Gwen then finds out some disturbing news.
Have you been following me? I knew it. How often?
Just once a day. Sometimes. Sometimes more.
Oh, come on, Peter. Just when I was starting to like Garfield's Spider-Man, he has to go back to being a creep.
I'm moving to England.
Yeah, I can't really blame her now. However, this creepy moment gets interrupted by Max Dillon causing a scene in Times Square, and we get our first look at Electro. Electro's design is not based on his original comic appearance, and the reason for that is probably due to the fact that fans like to make fun of his yellow and green costume, because, well, it just screams goofy cartoon villain. The movie instead has his entire body blue, and this is based off his later appearances in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. And yeah, personally I think they made the right call here. Spider-Man shows up to try and help the situation, and wait a minute. Why does the background music in this scene have lyrics? Not only is it distracting and unnecessary, but it's not subtle at all. The lyrics are just stating what Max is feeling in this moment. It's just funny because I actually do like the music in this movie, which is composed by Hans Zimmer, with some assistance from other people who are credited as the Magnificent Six, a reference to the Sinister Six. It does use a lot of down piano stuff like the first movie, but the main theme is this very epic sounding track, which I do really like. In general, though, I do think James Horner did a better job in the last movie, and I think I would have preferred him to return, but he didn't for some reason. Anyway, back to Times Square. Just as it seems like Max is starting to calm down, some dumb fuck decides to engage, which causes Max to think Spider-Man set him up, so we get our first fight between Spidey and Electro. A huge highlight of this fight is when electricity causes one of Peter's web shooters to crap out, and so we get this slow-mo moment where he has to rely on one web shooter to save a whole group of people from Electro's attacks. This is really awesome, and is an example of why I prefer Peter to have mechanical web shooters. You wouldn't get vulnerable moments like this with organic webs. Peter manages to stop Electro with the help of some firemen, and then heads home to listen to the song Gone, Gone, Gone while doing research into his parents.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Peter then does some experiments to try and make his webs electro-proof, and then gets a call from Harry, who thinks Peter can help save his life. Harry shows Peter a video of his father and Harry's father explaining the idea behind spider-human hybrids, and that they want to use spiders to cure various diseases. However, they never made it to human trials. That is until Peter got bit by one of the spiders.
I don't know how, and I don't know why, but he can do everything else a spider can.
Yeah, he catches thieves just like flies and arrives just in time. Right? Sorry, I just had to. Okay, in all seriousness, how does Harry know how Spider-Man's powers work? How does he even know how Spider-Man got his powers? How does he know that Spider-Man can self-heal? But the movie doesn't care, and Harry wants Spider-Man's blood. Peter reminds Harry what happened to Dr. Connors, and he has this response.
You saw what happened to Kurt Connors, right? Connors was weak. This is me, Peter.
What the fuck are you talking about? This has to be the most cliché bad guy response I've ever heard. Harry also asks Peter to talk to Spider-Man because Peter took his picture, which means he must know him. This entire scene makes no sense, and similar to the audience, Peter realizes that Harry is the dumbest person ever and leaves. Meanwhile, Gwen finds out that Max Dillon is Electro and that Oscorp covered it up. I will admit, I do think the whole scene of Peter helping Gwen and distracting the guards is a cute scene. Gwen ends up meeting Harry in the elevator. Am I the only one who gets an emo Peter vibe from Harry in this movie? In fact, I'm gonna call him Emo Harry for the rest of this review. We then see that Max Dillon is being kept at Ravencroft, which is connected to Oscorp because, well, of course it is. We then see yet another character from the comics who has nothing to do with their comic book counterpart. This is Dr. Kafka, who in the comics is actually a female named Dr. Ashley Kafka, who works as a psychiatrist at Ravencroft. She's not a villain in the comics. Okay, she became a villain in more recent times, but that's beside the point. However, this movie depicts the character as an evil mad scientist who enjoys torturing Electro. To be fair, this isn't as pointless as Alistair Smythe and Felicia Hardy, but yet another character who's named after a character from the comics, just for the sake of it. We then get a scene of Aunt May questioning why Peter spends so much time obsessing over his parents. So basically, she represents the audience in this scene.
No, I won't tell you. You're my boy. As far as I'm concerned, you're my boy. And I won't hurt you.
Now, while I've mentioned several times now that I don't care about the subplot with Peter's parents, this is actually my favorite moment from Sally Field's Aunt May. Aunt May is truly Peter's actual mother, and I like that this movie acknowledges that. Okay, so Peter arrives in costume to see Emo Harry, just to tell him that he can't give him his blood.
Look, we just need a bit more time to
figure out something else. Time!
Yes, you do, you dumbass. You have years, in fact. Look, whatever the fuck this genetic goblin disease is that affects the Osborn bloodline, it clearly doesn't kill you immediately. Just look at Norman. He looks like he was in his 50s at the very least before he succumbed to the disease. Emo Harry even says that he's 20 years old in this movie, and Norman told him that the symptoms first start at his age. Emo Harry's motivation in this movie has to be some of the most forced and nonsensical villain shit I've ever heard. Peter meets Gwen right as she's heading for her last Oxford interview, but Gwen thinks that maybe her and Peter are on different paths. I do think this is a clever moment because both Peter and Gwen are pursuing things that they feel they have to do, and they don't think the relationship is going to work despite wanting it to work. Meanwhile, Emo Harry is still upset about being rejected by Spider-Man, so Felicia tells him that Oscorp is actually hiding a bunch of top-secret projects. However, this is all used to frame Emo Harry, as the employee who's been wanting to get rid of him decides to fire him. Even though that doesn't really make sense, considering Emo Harry is the head of Oscorp, but whatever. So Peter, frustrated, ends up throwing his father's calculator at the wall, and it breaks open, revealing a bunch of tokens. He takes these tokens and ends up using them on a secret subway station, which unearths a secret underground train that his father used to hide his work. And the award for most random bullshit goes to... Alright, well, it's time to talk about the big reveal of Peter's father. In a video that Peter watches, his father explains that he refused to have his research used for weapons, so Norman Osborn made him seem like the bad guy. But guess what, folks? We also get another reveal.
The human DNA that I implanted in the spiders was my own. Which means that without me, without my bloodline, Oscorp can never replicate or continue my experiments.
Yes, that's right, the human DNA used for the spiders was Richard Parker's. And without his bloodline, Oscorp can't replicate his experiments. So essentially, Oscorp can't replicate Spider-Man. This shit is dumb. Okay, so if Oscorp can't replicate what happened to Peter because the spiders had his father's DNA, well, that means that the only reason Peter got his powers was because he has the same bloodline as his father. So if anyone else would have been bit by one of these spiders, they wouldn't have gotten the same result as Peter. And for that matter, you're telling me that the Parker bloodline is the only thing that would be able to create Spider-Man? Not only does that not make sense, but it's also just dumb to say that only Peter is capable of being Spider-Man. If Into the Spider-Verse has taught me anything, it's that anyone can wear the mask.
Anyone can wear the mask. You could wear the mask.
Okay, but seriously though, I hate this idea. I touched on this in the last review, but Peter getting power should be a complete accident. Now, different adaptations do different things with the spider. The Ultimate Spider-Man comics has the spider created by Norman Osborn. The Raimi films has the spider be part of a new species. And my favorite concept, the 90s animated series, as well as the original origin in Amazing Fantasy 15, have the spider be struck by radioactivity. But no matter what these adaptations end up doing, they all have something in common. Peter getting bit is an accident. It's a 1 in a billion chance, and it's something that could have happened to anyone. It's not like the spider chose Peter on purpose as if he's superior, like these movies are hinting at. Now, just to prove to you how simple and extraordinary this moment is, I'm gonna read to you a part of the original origin from Amazing Fantasy 15. Now excuse me as I put on my reading glasses. Okay, here we go. But as the experiment begins, no one notices a tiny spider descending from the ceiling on an almost invisible strand of web. A spider whom fate has given a starring if brief role to play in the drama we call life. Accidentally absorbing a fantastic amount of radioactivity, the dying insect, in sudden shock, bites the nearest living thing, at the split second before life ebbs from its radioactive body. Now wasn't that just beautiful? Nice and simple. Now let's go back to the dumbass movie explanation. This movie's reveal about Peter's father and the whole idea for the spiders does nothing but make Peter being Spider-Man unnecessarily complicated. Again, I will ask, what was the point of all this? I'm thinking it's because they set up Peter's father in the last movie, but then didn't end up doing anything with it, so they felt like they had to do something with it in this movie, even though it doesn't make any sense. Alright, so while Peter is discovering that he's an alpha male, emo Harry sneaks into Ravencroft and convinces Electro to help him. Electro manages to break free of his restraints and kills Dr. Kafka. Okay, seriously, what is with this shot?
You two gonna fuck or fight?
Peter finds out that Gwen made it into Oxford, and that he missed seeing her before she left. Harry, with the help of Electro, is able to convince the employee that threw him out to take him down to hidden projects. Harry ends up injecting the spider venom into him, but of course it doesn't end up doing what he wants, and only ends up making his goblin appearance even worse. So he ends up getting into this armored suit and glider that Oscorp just happened to have. Meanwhile, Gwen is in a taxi heading to England when she stops to see a web message that Peter spun for her. Huh, that's funny. Gwen is wearing the exact same outfit that she was wearing when she died in the comics. But come on, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Spider-Man then swings in to lift Gwen off her feet, and this is when Peter finally gives up trying to stay away from her.
I know there's a million reasons why we shouldn't be together, I know that. But I'm tired of them. We've all got to make a choice.
This is another moment between Peter and Gwen that I really like. Peter finally realizes that he wants to be with Gwen, and is tired of trying to do the opposite. Both of them want to be together, so they both accept that they should be together. However, this moment is interrupted by Electro causing a citywide blackout. Something else I like about this upcoming fight with Electro is that Gwen is able to help Peter combat Electro by having Peter magnetize his web shooters so they can't be fried again. It further reinforces why Peter and Gwen should be together. They can both help each other. Peter is the muscle and Gwen is the brains. So after magnetizing the web shooters, Gwen actually says something that's a nice callback to a line from the first movie.
He's one of Midtown Science's best and brightest.
Really?
He's second in his class.
Oh, second?
Yeah.
You sure about that?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, works good.
And that is why you were number 2 at Midtown.
Rub it in, okay.
I'm coming with you.
Gwen, you're not coming with me.
Yes, I am.
Gwen, it's too dangerous.
I'm coming with you. I've seen the grid specs and I know how to reset the entire system.
You know, Peter, she's right. Maybe you need to let Gwen come with you. She's proven to be pretty useful. Yeah, on second thought, maybe not. Here's a fun fact for you though. Gwen blurting out Peter's name was actually a fuck-up on Emma Stone's part, but they ultimately decided to keep it in because I guess they thought it was funny. So Peter goes to fight Electro, and this leads to the best fight of the movie. We get some really cool slow-mo shots of Spider-Man dodging Electro's attacks, and Electro even bounces Spider-Man around to play the Itsy Bitsy Spider song.
I hate this song!
Spider jokes. Now, while this fight is happening, they also keep on cutting back to 2 planes that are in danger of crashing into each other because they don't have radar as a result of the blackout. Yeah, why the fuck is this in the movie? We know the planes aren't gonna crash into each other. There's no tension in this scene. I know I keep on saying this, but what is the point of this shit? Now, before I talk about how the fight with Electro ends, I do want to say that I really like what they did with Electro in this movie. Max Dillon is essentially Spider-Man gone wrong. Just like Peter, Max starts out as a social outcast, and then winds up with powers. The difference being that Max was obsessed with Spider-Man and wanted to get all the attention like him. After getting powers, everyone is now able to see him, but he finds that people still aren't treating him with the respect he wanted, and because he didn't have an Uncle Ben-like figure to guide him, he decides to use his powers for selfish reasons. That's a great thing to do with a Spider-Man villain, and it's why I think Electro is easily the best villain these movies had to offer. Although that's not saying much considering the other villains are a giant green dinosaur man and Emo Harry. However, I do have one huge problem with the way Electro's demise is handled. Yes, you just saw that. Peter and Gwen manage to fry Electro until he explodes. Oh gee, I wonder why this is such a problem. Maybe it's because Spider-Man doesn't kill people. I honestly can't believe that I don't hear more people talk about this. This is the only Spider-Man movie where Spider-Man kills the bad guy. Now before you say, but Arron, what about the Raimi films? Most of the villains ended up dying while fighting Peter. Well, here's the thing. All of the villains that died in those films either died on accident or killed themselves. Dennis Carradine tripped and fell out of the window. Norman Osborn was impaled by his own glider while trying to hit Peter. Otto Octavius willingly sacrificed himself in order to save New York. Harry sacrificed himself in order to save Peter, and Eddie Brock decided to kill himself when Peter threw a pumpkin bomb at the symbiote. None of those deaths were directly caused by Peter. Now, some people might also bring up the fact that in Spider-Man 3, Peter did attempt to kill both Sandman and Harry. Yes, that is true. But for one thing, they both turned out to still be alive, and another, Peter was under the influence of the symbiote, which makes him more aggressive. Look, I'm not saying Spider-Man 3 gets off easy, because I said in my review of that movie that I don't think they handled it perfectly, but it's not as big of a problem as it is here, because Electro does in fact die, and Peter doesn't have the symbiote to blame. And you can't even make the argument that Peter and Gwen didn't know this would happen, because they literally talked about it.
Now, how do we stop him?
Okay, so he's electric. He's like a battery. So what happens if you overcharge a battery?
It explodes.
Right.
So we use his power against him. Perfect.
They knew this would happen, which means they both intended to kill Electro. People constantly argue over Batman killing people in the movies, yet I don't hear many people talk about this movie. It's fucking Spider-Man. He shouldn't be killing anyone. Not only does this go against Spider-Man's character, but it just seems so weird that this is Electro's demise. The poor character who never asked for these powers and has so much anger built up in him is killed by the hero he admired. What the fuck kind of ending is that? Also, let's go back to earlier.
I don't know what's going on with me.
I can see that. I believe you.
I got so much anger.
I can see that. I can see you don't want to be here. I can see you're scared. I can see you don't know what's happening to you. I can see that you don't want to hurt anybody.
You lied to me!
No, I'm trying to help you. Let me help you.
Yeah, that's right. Peter said that he wanted to help Max, yet he ends up blowing him the fuck up? Even if Peter and Gwen thought this was the only option, well, that's still bullshit, because what happened to just talking to the guy? Make him understand that you're not trying to hurt him. In fact, why doesn't Peter just tell Max that he knows what it's like to be an outcast? Peter can try to relate to him, and that could convince Max to calm down. It's disappointing too, because Electro is actually the most interesting character in the movie, and then they end his character like this. Oh, but it's not over yet, folks. If you remember, I said that the Green Goblin was one of the villains in this movie. Even though it's almost over. But hey, let's look at the bright side. At least they have an opportunity to give us a different Green Goblin design that hopefully improves upon the ridiculous shit we got in the Raimi film. Why does this movie have to fuck up everything? This has to be the worst Green Goblin design we've ever gotten. It's so bad that it makes the Raimi film seem brilliant by comparison. Why does he have to look like that? Why couldn't they at least give him a mask? You know what? I'm just gonna say it. Harry in Spider-Man 3 was done better than Emo Harry in this movie. And that says a lot, because if you've seen my Spider-Man 3 review, you know that I shit all over Harry in that movie. I was disappointed because they abandoned all the build-up of the first two movies, but at the very least, his motivations made sense, and they did have a clever idea having Harry impaled by his own glider. He also had a cool design and cool weapons. Emo Harry in Amazing Spider-Man 2 has none of that. His motivations are completely idiotic, his goblin disease doesn't make any sense, and he doesn't even have a cool design. The whole setup for his character and what he becomes is so forced. He might honestly be the worst live-action Spider-Man villain we've seen so far. And I do want to be clear, I don't blame Dane DeHaan for this. I actually do think he's doing a good job performance-wise, so it's a shame his character just doesn't work at all. So Emo Harry sees Gwen and is able to figure out Peter as Spider-Man. Wow, that has to be the smartest thing he's done in this movie. Emo Harry takes Gwen and ends up dropping her over a clock tower, but Peter catches her and has her hang on to a web below while attempting to fight Emo Harry. The fight between them, while short, is actually pretty intense, which I do like. However, while Peter is able to stop Emo Harry, there's one thing he's not able to stop. What? Gwen Stacy dies? Who could have saw this coming? Oh, that's right, everyone. Okay, so before I get into my next point, I want to say that when you take this scene by itself, it's actually a really well done scene. It's got an intense fight, great music, I love the shot of Gwen's silhouette and Peter's lenses as he dives towards her, and Garfield's acting is phenomenal. But really, I just don't get why Gwen had to die in this movie. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The reason why Gwen Stacy was killed off back in the 70s was because the character wasn't interesting, and the writers felt that Mary Jane was the more interesting love interest for Peter. Plus, it makes for a surprising ending and a tragic event in Peter's life. But none of that really lines up with this movie. First off, as I stated earlier, I find that they actually improved upon Peter and Gwen's relationship in this movie. The scenes are not only a lot more tolerable, but I like that Gwen is able to help Peter figure out how to combat Electro, even though they end up killing him, but that's not the point. This movie fixes one of my problems with the first movie. It's able to make Peter and Gwen's relationship make sense. Peter is the muscle and Gwen is the brains. Look, this still isn't my favorite interpretation of Gwen Stacy, but she's certainly a lot better here than in the comics, and better than how she was in the first movie. Not only that, but her death in this movie, unlike the comics, doesn't come as a surprise because you can see it coming from a mile away. And then you have my biggest problem with Gwen dying. It pretty much abandoned the whole dilemma that Peter is facing in this movie. Okay, so let's recap Peter and Gwen's problems in the movie. Peter's conflicted on whether he should be with Gwen because he doesn't want to put her in danger. Gwen wants to be with Peter because she feels it's her choice to make. But then right before the fight with Electro, Peter decides to be with Gwen. And not long after, this happens. What exactly is the movie trying to say here? Gwen dying right after they decide to be together just makes both Peter and Gwen seem like fucking idiots. Peter is worried about putting Gwen in danger, and then finally accepts that it's okay, and then bam, Gwen fucking dies. Gwen wants to be with Peter despite knowing the risks, and then bam, she fucking dies. It's just such a bizarre choice for the story. Peter isn't learning anything here. If anything, he's actually proven right about putting Gwen in danger. Remember how I said Peter and Gwen's dilemma in this movie is similar to Raimi's Spider-Man 2? Well, let's go back to that movie and what Mary Jane said when she decided she wanted to be with Peter.
I know there'll be risks, but I want to face them with you. It's wrong that we should only be half alive, half of ourselves.
Yeah, that right there is basically what they do with Peter and Gwen in this movie. Both movies have Peter wanting to stay away from his love interest out of fear that they'll be in danger. Now just imagine if Mary Jane died during the events of that movie. Yeah, it would make her seem like a fucking idiot, and it would be a terrible conclusion to that relationship dilemma. And that's exactly what this movie does by having Gwen die. Now you might say, Aaron, you just don't understand what this movie is trying to do. There's a common theme with this movie. Time. Yes, folks, I am aware of what this movie was trying to do. Mark Webb said himself that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is about time, and that time is unavoidable. All the characters in the movie are running out of time. Richard Parker ran out of time, Emo Harry is running out of time, and Peter ran out of time with Gwen. I will give the movie some credit. That is a great concept for a Spider-Man movie, and the fact that the final battle takes place in a clock tower is clever, but it's executed so poorly. Gwen dying renders Peter's relationship problem pointless. Emo Harry running out of time doesn't even make sense because he should have another 30 years at least. And what the fuck does Electro have to do with running out of time? I guess the only character that this concept works for is Peter's father, but who gives a shit about that? The concept of running out of time just doesn't work for this movie. Now, even though the movie is almost over, there's still quite a few things left to talk about. Firstly, right after Gwen's death, you get a shot of the outside of the clock tower, and the time that is displayed on the clock is 121, which is the number of the issue of Amazing Spider-Man which Gwen dies in. A cool Easter egg for the fans. So Peter continues to visit Gwen's grave pretty much every day. Now I want to bring up something major that they cut out of the movie. There's a deleted scene where Peter is at the cemetery and his father shows up. Yeah, he's been in hiding this whole time. I've heard several people actually say that this should have been included and that Andrew Garfield has a great reaction. Are you serious? You actually think this would be a good thing to add? Yes, Garfield's acting is really good, but revealing his father has been alive this whole time is fucking ridiculous and does nothing but complicate things. I don't care if the acting is good. Good acting doesn't mean the scene is good. This scene is dumb as fuck, and all his father does is tell Peter that he needs to keep a part of Gwen with him. That's something we already got in the final cut, which I'll talk about in a bit, so it's unnecessary. He also claims he knew that now is the time when Peter needs him, but how the fuck does he know that? This whole scene makes zero sense, and I'm glad they removed it. If you really want to see Garfield's acting displayed in this scene, well guess what? It's included in the Blu-ray release. In fact, it's actually advertised as one of the deleted scenes, so there you go. Now speaking of things that were deleted, I'm now going to talk about something I mentioned when talking about the production of the movie. I mentioned I wanted to wait until the review to talk about this. There was actually an entire character that was cut from the movie, and that character is Mary Jane. And no, this isn't just an idea that was talked about in early development. This was something that actually went pretty far. Mary Jane was actually played by Shailene Woodley, and here's some photos of her on the set. They ultimately decided to remove her last minute because, let's face it, the movie already had a ton of bullshit already. I'm kinda torn on whether I would want this or not. Maybe if they would have cut out the stuff with Peter's father and made Emo Harry a supporting character rather than a villain, they could have included Mary Jane as well. I think it would have been cool to see a cast of characters similar to the 60s and 70s comics, but at the same time, I understand why they cut her out. Alright, so back to the actual movie. Emo Harry is taken to Ravencroft, where he gets a visit from the mysterious Man in Black that was teased in the last movie. And it's here that the Man in Black is revealed as Mr. Fierce. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys don't even know who this is, do you? He's pretty obscure. In fact, this character is so obscure, even I didn't know who the fuck this was until doing research for this review. His full name is Gustav Fierce, but he's also known as the Gentleman. He doesn't have any power of his own, but is a master planner. It's revealed that he was involved in the deaths of Peter's parents. It's pretty bizarre that they chose to have this character in the movie. He's not even from the comics. The character made his first appearance in a novel called Spider-Man: The Gathering of the Sinister Six, released in 1999. It's funny too, because from what I gathered, his portrayal is pretty accurate to his original appearance. So it's just ironic when you think about the other more prominent characters that are put in this movie that have nothing to do with their original appearances. So the Gentleman in this movie works with Harry as they try to create new threats for the city. You see the Gentleman walk past a bunch of familiar weapons, such as Vulture's wings, Doc Ock's arms, and a rhinoceros mech suit. Are you fucking kidding me? Why does every villain in these movies have to come from Oscorp? To make matters worse, in one of the trailers for this movie, you can actually see the fucking symbiote at Oscorp. Really? This is the most lazy setup for the Sinister Six they could have possibly come up with. Okay, so they decide to give Alexei Stitsevich the Rhino mech suit and send him out to cause havoc. Now, since Gwen died, Peter gave up being Spider-Man for the last 5 months, but after some encouragement from Aunt May, he listens to Gwen's graduation speech. Finally, we get back to the stuff I like. I really like that both Aunt May and Gwen's speech is able to make Peter realize that he can always keep a part of Gwen with him. Gwen will be a part of Peter going forward, and I do think that's a really great conclusion to her character, even though I still don't think her dying makes much sense. Fun fact, while Rhino is causing damage, you can actually see Shailene Woodley as Mary Jane in a diner for a very brief moment. Now, speaking of Rhino, some people were disappointed because Rhino doesn't have much screen time. A lot of people say this movie has 3 villains and that the third one is Rhino. But Rhino isn't one of the movie's antagonists. This is something that Sony tricked people into thinking with the trailers and marketing for the movie. In reality, Rhino is essentially used as the bad guy of the week. Just a minor villain to use so Spider-Man can have someone to encounter at the beginning and then again at the end. Rhino was never really a big villain in the comics anyway, so I don't mind this at all. So Rhino is now on the rampage, but since Spider-Man isn't around anymore, the kid that Spider-Man saved earlier in the film decides that he must be Spider-Man. He's somehow able to sneak past police and is all ready to face the Rhino. That is until the real Spider-Man shows up.
I knew you'd come back.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up for me. You're the bravest kid I've ever seen.
Yeah, Peter, it's great that you showed up and all, but why not bring the kid to safety before having this moment with him? I mean, the Rhino could end up firing at the kid at any moment now. But luckily, Alexei is a complete idiot, just like everyone else in this movie, and decides to wait until Peter takes care of the kid. And the movie ends as we see Rhino charge towards Spider-Man. So that was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This movie is fucked. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a complete mess. Almost everything good that this movie does is followed by something bad. It has some really good setups, but some horrible payoffs. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is really fun to watch, but also jokes around at inappropriate times. Peter and Gwen's relationship is improved, and their scenes are a lot better than the last movie, but then it ends with Gwen dying. Max Dillon is a really interesting character, and is a great mirror image of Peter, but then Peter and Gwen end up killing him, which not only makes for a shit conclusion, but completely goes against Spider-Man's character. They finally give us answers with Peter's parents, but those answers end up ruining more of Spider-Man's character, and it's also just not necessary. Despite Dane DeHaan giving a good performance, Emo Harry ends up being one of, if not the worst live-action villain of any Spider-Man movie, with motivations that don't make sense, and a Goblin design that somehow ends up worse than the Raimi version. The movie throws in a bunch of characters from the comics that don't have anything in common with their comic book counterparts, and have no purpose whatsoever. And worst of all, we'll never know if Garfield's Spider-Man is a Leo or not. Now, to address something I said at the beginning, yes, my opinion on this film has changed since 2014. I remember liking it back then, but I thought the first movie was better. Well, strangely enough, my opinion is kind of the opposite now. Even though I don't think this movie is good, I actually think it's an improvement over the first movie. They improved on Spider-Man, they improved on Peter and Gwen's relationship, the action scenes are stellar, and Electro is a far better villain than Lizard. I also find it so much more enjoyable. However, despite my enjoyment, I absolutely cannot call this movie good. There's not really anything that happens in this movie that makes any sense. This is probably the dumbest Spider-Man movie in terms of the script. This is a case where I think it's worse as a movie than it is as an adaptation. If this wasn't a Spider-Man movie, I would probably dislike it a lot more, and probably give it a 3 or a 4, honestly. But as an adaptation, I would go closer to a 6. Now, to even things out, I was originally going to give this movie a 5, but since that's the same score I gave the first movie, I'll bump it up slightly given that I did say it's an improvement. I'm going to give The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a 5.25 out of 10. It's really a shame because Andrew Garfield, at least in this movie, is really good as this character, and he deserves to be in better movies. He's a huge Spider-Man fan, but he just gets fucked over with a shitty script. After Spider-Man No Way Home came out, a lot of people started demanding that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 be made, but I just don't want that. I don't want a series of movies where Peter's blood is what makes him Spider-Man, where all the villains come from Oscorp, where Spider-Man won't hesitate to kill the villain. I don't want a continuation of this story. And trust me, when I go over the production history in the next review, you'll be glad we never got a continuation. But you want to know what I would want to see? I want to see Andrew Garfield play Spider-Man in a new series of films. I think Garfield deserves another chance at playing this character, with a good story this time around. No more shitty origin story bullshit. No more Peter's parents. Give him a fresh start. And so ends the tale of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. It's tragic, really. A huge Spider-Man fan who got fucked good and hard by Sony. But folks, it's time to leave these movies behind and enter a bigger universe. That's right. Join me next time when I review Spider-Man Homecoming. And all I have to say about that is, I'm nothing without this suit.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.